Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Bandit Network Television. Thank you for tuning back into another segment of the DELPHI podcast. Tonight we are going to be continuing our dive into Delphi as we learn more about what is transpiring. Because now it looks like that things are being taken to or could be taken to the Supreme Court. There's been a lot of courtroom drama, as we talked about before, but the latest news, which is of huge relevance, in my opinion, and one of the main topics that I'll be giving my commentary on tonight, and that is this new piece of information that from early on in the case, after the unalivings, there were people that were interviewed, questioned, audio and video evidence, which has been destroyed, allegedly destroyed. The defense is also claiming that if not intentional, at least malice, basically. Or not malice, but negligent, not malice. No. Well, you can argue that this may be malice. There's some shady shit that is happening within Delphi. And one can only hope that Judge Gall, now this information has came out that early on within the investigation, allegedly, there's alleged exculpatory evidence that has been destroyed. And it's not like the defense is saying, oh yeah, someone else did this and you can figure it out. We're just saying that a bunch of no, they're actually naming people, calling people out, and they have been for months, ever since this Frank's memorandum was read. So, Brad Holder, I'm going to be sharing some information about him tonight that some of you may or may not know, but I do think that it will add a lot of context and will be the core to bring everything around of why were search warrants written up but not executed on certain individuals. And this is days within the first week of February 13th, 2017. People were being looked into that early on. There were actually officers that were going down the route of this Odinistic Noric paganism theory that the defense is claiming what happened to the children. They're claiming that a bunch of Odinists sacrificed. 2 police officers were going down that route. There were search warrants that were written up, but they just weren't issued. So what's going on exactly? Is someone covering up something? How deep does this go? Once again, thank you for tuning back into Bandit Network Television. This is a long-winded intro, but once again, thank you for your patience if you have stuck around. Like, share, and subscribe. You can also go back and view my other extensive playlists that we've talked about, Delphi, and other crime cases. I do invite you to do that. That being said, let's go ahead and hop into this Delphi podcast. The first piece of information that I would like to share with you is an interview, and this is Robert Evans. He is a former prosecutor in Carroll County, Indiana, where this happened at. But yeah, and I believe that he has some information to share. Now, keep in mind, this interview was from February 2021. February 2021. It's 2024. It's been 3 years going on. It will be 3 years in 2 days. But he's talking about the avenues and like what it was like early on within the case. I'm going to be pausing periodically. By the way, this does fall under what I'm about to share, the Copyright Act of 1976. We are using this for informative and educational purposes. Once again, this is Robert Evans, if I'm pronouncing his last name right.
It's a crime of passion. It's about boyfriends, girlfriends, husband, wives, or some emotional dispute. We've never had, in my time, I was first prosecutor in 1987. We never had a murder in a robbery or a random murder. You know, we had drunk driving deaths. We had murders of husbands and wives, but nothing like this. And so it was tremendously shocking. And the outpouring of law enforcement support was incredible then, because not only did the FBI come in extreme numbers, but the law enforcement, the police departments of the surrounding counties, the sheriff's departments, the city police departments, they all sent detectives. And in those early days, there were plenty of leads, but there was no great lead. People have asked me sometimes, was there a point where y'all knew who did it, but you couldn't prove it? No. When I was involved, that point was never reached. There was never a time where we thought, this is the person, we just don't have enough to charge.
Let's stop right there. So early on within the case, this man is claiming that there was never a point where there was a definite person that they said could have done this or very likely to have done this. He also says that there were tons of leads.
But there was so much physical evidence of the crime, and the crime had been found so immediately after it had been committed, that it's the sort of thing that experienced law enforcement officers, experienced investigators all believe, well, this is going to be.
Let me also say this. Now we know the truth. Because the defense called some people out, not verbatim, but they actually named and has been naming these two people that were interviewed. Hearing this now, it kind of, He lies, as what some would say. This is just lies. But let's carry on.
Solved really quickly, and normally it would be. It's shocking to me that it hasn't been solved today. In today's world, we have cell phone evidence and we have DNA evidence. But if you had been a police officer in 1960 and you had arrived at this crime scene with the traditional physical evidence that was there, and then not to mention the fact, of course, we had video and audio of the person I think certainly killed the girls, you would be certain you were going to catch them within 48 hours.
So why did they not compare that video to the people we now know were interviewed and looked into? Why? Was that ever done? Was it done and it was somehow conveniently destroyed?
So when you add in the fact that we have evidence today, or we have investigatory methods that we didn't have in the 60s, all police officers, I believe anybody who was involved, I doubt anybody in that first 24 hours had any doubt it was going to be solved within 2-3 days. And
just from the evidence at the scene.
Yes.
Well, how could that be? Because these interviews, we're talking about the interviews being within the same week. The interviews being within the same week. Which means there could have been, the way that I'm interpreting it, by then, days after the crimes, something was leading to these certain individuals. There's also information floating out there that after these crimes took place, and we're talking about weeks after, we're going to be getting into this information later on within the podcast, but I just want to go ahead and mention this, that people on Facebook, there was a certain Odinist group, cultist group, I believe on Facebook, that Brad Holder was a part of, that was posting marks on a tree in BLOOD. We're going to be getting into that pretty soon. Let's carry on.
Circumstances of the crime, yes. Mm-hmm. And, then after that, what happened was they developed a system where when there were tips or there were hints or there were reason to believe somebody was in the neighborhood, they would assign, we had so many officers working on it that the guys they give them sheets, in effect, go find these people and interview them about where they were that day and so on. And so there was this unbelievable manpower, totally unprecedented in my experience, working on this and enthusiastically and passionately. And I would have been certain, if you had asked me at the time, I said, next couple of days, they're going to find a suspect and action's going to be taken. Not because I had any particular feeling about a particular thing. It's just because of the circumstances of the crime.
At the scene.
Yes. I've told people before, there were times in those early days, it'd be late at night and guys wouldn't go home because they thought, no, we're going to go out and do this and then we're going to solve this, because that's the perception everybody had. Not because we had necessarily a really good lead, just because it just seemed like, well, of course this is going to be solved. The location is it's not a tourist attraction or anything. If you weren't from around here, you'd have no reason to even know such a place existed.
And I believe this is the part right here that he's talking about or referencing to Ron Logan's property. Listen very carefully.
The trail actually terminates at the bridge. The girls had gone out because it was a beautiful day, 52 degrees, as I recall, in February. They just decided we're going to go out for a walk. And I remember at the time I would see on the internet or nationally people saying, I can't believe those girls were out there, as it was the wilderness. You could walk from my office downtown out to where they were in 20 minutes, maybe half an hour tops. Mm-hmm. And you could drive there in 2 minutes, 3 minutes. And so It was just on the edge of town. In fact, there were houses. In fact, where the crime scene is, there's a house up on a hill that can actually look down the back.
Well, technically it wasn't a crime scene because that's where the bodies were allegedly. It's been allegedly said that they were tampered with, according to, I guess, the information that the defense was claiming, how they were staged in certain positions and details that I'm not going to go into because everyone already knows. But yeah, and that's one of the reasons why the defense is claiming that this is an Odinistic sacrifice. But the two girls were found on Ron Logan's property, y'all. And I've already talked about Ron Logan. It's awfully strange how he would lie or ask his cousin to lie for him for an alibi. If there was no need, there would be no need if if he wasn't involved. And there's too many coincidences around him. Now, of course, he's not here to speak, but he's spoken a lot within the media while he was still alive. And if you look at Bridge Guy, which I'm not going to harp on that because this is not important now, as some say, it's not important who figuring out Bridge Guy is. What's important is making sure that we're going down all the right avenues, especially this new information that has came out with early suspects being interviewed early on within the case, search warrants not being executed on said individuals, and evidence that was allegedly destroyed that could be exculpatory to Richard Allen's innocence. I'm not here to say if he's involved solely. I'm not here to say if he's innocent. I don't know. But I'm just saying Ron Logan, I thought that he needed to be looked into. And even if you go back to older content, I'm going to shut up about Ron Logan and get back to this video that we're listening to with this gentleman. But I do want to say this. The FBI agent said that there was something found on his property that found them to conclude he could have committed the crime of murder. That information is out there if you want to go look it up for yourself. Let's carry on.
Backyard can look down and see that house, or the crime scene, I should say. And so the idea that they were someplace dangerous, I wouldn't have hesitated to have my child at that age to be walking out there. That's another thing that's shocking about the whole thing. Well, I guess I fear at this point that the most likely thing is, and this is a terrible thing to hope for, is that some other crime would be solved, and the person, as has sometimes happened in the past, the person would say, "Oh, I committed this crime in Delphi also." I started to say, on the one hand, because it's not a very famous kind of place, I always tend to think it was a local person. But the fact that it's not been solved, and the fact there doesn't appear to be any motivation for it, it appears to be a serial killer type of thing. I'm not saying it is. I don't know. But makes me wonder if it wasn't a random act by somebody who isn't around here all the time. But I don't know. I mean, I'd like to tell you I have a strong feeling about that, but I don't. Early on, I would have said, well, it's surely somebody local, because who would know to be out there? Why would you be out there? Why would you even expect to find any other human beings out there in February? It's broad daylight. This is something that needs to be emphasized. This is not like these girls were in a back alley in the middle of the night. They're in broad daylight, Carroll County, Indiana.
What is the best way to get shredded? Is it intense exercise?
Sorry about that. That was advertisement. See if we...
I knew the girls were missing the day before. And I can tell you, I at least, and I think most people thought, oh, well, they're hanging out with friends. They've had a fight with mom. no such thing happened. Don't misunderstand me. But we didn't think much about it. And when the next day, when their bodies were found, it was shocking to everybody. It was certainly shocking to me because in Carroll County, such a crime was unprecedented. People kill each other sometimes, but generally it's a crime of passion. It's about boyfriends, girlfriends, husband, wives, or some just emotional dispute. We've never had, in my time, I was first prosecutor in 1987. We never had a murder in a robbery or a random murder. We had drunk driving deaths. We had murders of husbands and wives, but nothing like this. And so it was tremendously shocking. And the outpouring of law enforcement support was incredible then, because not only did the FBI come in extreme numbers, but the law enforcement, the police departments of the surrounding counties, the sheriff's departments, the city police departments, they all sent detectives. And in those early days, there were plenty of leads, but there was no great lead. People have asked me sometimes, was there a point where
If that's the statement that does not make any sense, because you can't, if they were already looking into people and if they were interviewed within the first week, then that would lead one to believe that they already had evidence to look into these people or talk to them more. I believe that Brad Holder, if I'm getting this right, because it's kind of confusing, his father claims that he never did know Abigail Williams. He's never met her. And then fast forward to 2023 when he was interviewed again, he was saying that, oh, well, I met her once. Still don't know her. Just paraphrasing. But the point is, that's an inconsistent statement. Yeah, it's not the same. You never met somebody, but you met them once. That's just one inconsistency. But again, we don't know this information because this alleged exculpatory evidence has been destroyed, coincidentally. And that brings me into my next piece of information that I do want to share, and that is with Brad Holder. What I'm about to show on the screen is the Facebook post that some of you may have seen, and it's nothing graphic, so don't get up in arms. It's nothing that you need to, it's not like anything too much, but I do want to show this because I think this needs to be talked about more, and I want to know your guys' thoughts. So this is a Facebook group that Brad Holder is allegedly a part of. It reads, and this was posted on March 25th of 2017. March 25th of 2017. Been a while, guys. I've not forgotten. I'm fighting my own battles lately, and the enemies are getting greater in numbers instead of fewer. But I look to the gods, and they give me strength to keep fighting. Hail Odin, Thor, and Skadi. This is from my Thor bolt today. A cool thing about this picture is the something that I cannot pronounce, rune on the tree, was from my blood, but that was almost 2 weeks ago, and the imprint remains. Now, 2 weeks from March 25th of 2017, from 2 weeks ago, the 14th. So that would not be exactly around the time of the murders, but again, this is just hearsay. This is just a version of the story. And as you can see, right here is the tree. I don't know what location this is. It looks like that he has. Ooh, I'm sorry for blowing this up. Okay, let's go into detail right here. Let's go into some real deep diving. We have a hammer. We have a candle, it looks like, with runes. We have, I don't know what that is. Is that a crystal? Looks like, I don't know, cigars, perhaps? And what is this? Right here. Oh, I don't know what that reads. Katie, if that's a K. And if we go up to, I guess right here, that is what he is referring to. The rune that was left inside the tree. Now, this was posted to this Facebook group that some claim Brad Holder was a part of. According to this person that posted it, it was 2 weeks ago from the time that this post was up. And again, this is from March 25th of 2017. And I keep on messing with the Zoom. I'm sorry. Okay. But yeah, I just thought this was an interesting thing. This needs to be talked about more, honestly, because y'all, they were posting this, and this was in 2017, so I don't know, were any of these people looked into? Did law enforcement know? According to 2 officers, they were already looking into the Odinistic theory, but for whatever reason, they led them. Police wanted to go down other avenues, I guess. I don't know. What led them to look into other avenues and think more people could be involved, other individuals that could be involved so much to bring them in to interview them. And then now we have 7 years worth of people holding this to their chest. And keep in mind, as the information that I shared with you earlier in that podcast, the prosecution already had this information about Odinist, but they were waiting until they how they phrase it. The defense was already aware of Odinist, so that's when they turned it over. I don't know how it happened exactly, but it's kind of shady that they would do that. And in my opinion, I think that there's definitely someone that's tampered with something along the way within the 7 years. I don't think it's a coincidence. Let's go into YouTube and see what we can find about Brad Holder. Once again, thank you for tuning back into Bandit Network Television. Like, share, and subscribe. Go check out my other podcast with this case and other true crime stories. Okay, everyone, I am back. So I was able to find a short segment here of Inside Edition of them talking about the Delphi case. And the title reads, Delphi Murder Investigation, I Am Possible Suspect Report. You're going to hear the commentator say that police did look into other people, but they turned out not to be suspects. So listen very carefully.
Someone out there will recognize him by the way he walks or talks. The report says investigators wouldn't confirm if they are looking at Chadwell in connection with the Delphi murders, but it states he is not the first person accused of an abduction crime to be looked into, adding other people who were investigated never turned out to be suspects in the case. Chadwell has pleaded not guilty to the charges against him in connection with the 9-year-old girl. There's a reward of $325,000 for anyone who comes forward with information that leads to the arrest and conviction of their killer. Tips can be called into the Indiana State Police at 844-459-5786. For Inside Edition
Okay, Inside Edition was the source of that
the
information.
Lafayette Journal and Courier
My
reports-
question, I'm sorry about that, advertisements. Yeah, were these other people ever interviewed again between 2017 and 2023? Now that their names have been implemented within the murders, what do they have to say? Have they came out and spoke about the murders? Have they, I heard some information. I can't remember who it is. It's just hearsay, but, you know, it's been said that one of these people joke about the murders, crudely joke about what happened to Abby and Libby. Other people being looked into, why were the search warrants not executed? Did someone catch wind of what was happening and be like, oh shit, we have to get rid of it. We have to clean this up real fast. We have to wipe our ass real fast. You know, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but I'm just saying, you know, they really wanted to clean this up. In my opinion, this is something very shady, y'all. Because if anything, it's negligent for the state of Indiana to not have something backed up, or not have these other people looked into, or at least have a safekeeping of these early interviews on file, something that is a backup of these interviews. If anything, it is negligent. Now, some will argue that it's intentional. You're entitled to think whatever way you want to. But all I know is something's off kilter and something reeks in Delphi. Most certainly. Yeah, why were these other search warrants not executed? What was it search warrants or arrest warrants? Because I don't want to be putting my foot in the mouth. If anybody knows that information, if you know whether it is, were they search warrants or were they warrants for arrest? Or both? You can comment below, because I'm not sure. But all I know that's been said is that warrants, I'm going to assume that it was arrest warrants. How does one go from interviewing people within the first week of the crime, to having police officers talk about this Odinistic theory. And then you interview the two individuals, Brad Holder and the other guy. And they have ties to Odinism. Oh, yeah. That's when you consider all of that paired with the guard that was at Richard Allen's attorney or his prison. Can't speak. His safety guard, who was wearing the Odinistic patches, and after told by the judge he cannot do so, he came back with tattoos, allegedly. Allegedly. Paired with the same people to force him to call his wife and sister, I believe, or someone else, and confess to the crimes he is being charged of, and threats that these cult members will get his friends, or not, his family and his kids. They threatened the lives of his family. So Richard Allen confessed. This information has been shared last year. Yeah, that's what the defense is claiming. And if you're on the side where you think that he is the right person, that could be a valid argument. Well, he just admitted to the crimes. But people admit to false confessions all the time, so was he really telling the truth? And is that enough to really seal a conviction? It's going to be very curious how Miss Gall, Frances Gall, Judge Gall handles this case, and what her future actions will be now that we know this information. Will this case go to trial or to the Supreme Court? What will be the future of Richard Allen? Will he be exonerated? Are there other people involved? I don't know the answer to any of these questions that I'm asking. But you can share your thoughts and opinions below in the comments. Thank you for watching. And you have been listening to Bandit Network Television. By the way, if you want to donate, my Cash App and my PayPal is listed in the description box below if you would like to support this channel.